All good people are appalled by the sufferings of the innocent.
I don't think that's true, because you know what? I'm good. As a matter of fact, I am the best, and the suffering of the innocent is just frankly hilarious. But that's only because those Mother Hubbards are always walking around talking about how they didn't do nothing. Exactly. You are so lazy you can't even do a little bit of evil. Useless.
When an innocent person is struck by a painful disease, or tortured, or murdered,
one of those things is not like the others. It's almost like you're trying to make out that the lion's share of suffering is man-made, when that's simply not true. The universe is a cold and spiteful place where even existing in most of it is literally impossible. And long after human beings accidentally explode themselves out of existence, suffering will continue until the last sentient being whimpers its last yelp into the void of a now lifeless universe. And it'll be hilarious.
We naturally feel sadness and helplessness and often rage.
And then someone has a bad thing happen to them. I mean, what has the innocent got to do with the default and only emotions a person can feel? What do you mean there's more feelings than just those? No, you're right. There's also that one where you enjoy watching bad things happen to other people. Schadenfreude, I think they call it. You gotta love Germans and their need to have a word for literally everything. My favourite is, and forgive my pronunciation, Backpfeifengestickt, which is a face badly in need of a fist. Mostly because I think it every time I use one of those mirror things and I see that asshole on the other side. F that guy.
Many people have claimed that such suffering is a proof that God does not exist.
Do they? Because that's not true. What would the existence of suffering have to do with the existence of some kind of universe maker guy? Nothing. Now, what they probably said was that it's proof that your God doesn't exist because your God has been given the attributes of all-powerful and all-loving, and suffering in the circumstances like that simply couldn't exist with someone who has those attributes. It's like how I am all whiskey consuming and all whiskey belongs to me. So of course there is no whiskey left in the universe. Wait, what? Someone has some? Get me their names and a cannon.
Their argument goes like this. God is all good and all powerful. Such a God would not permit unnecessary suffering. Yet we constantly observe unjust suffering.
Oh, so you do know what they say. So they are not saying that a God could not exist. They are saying that your God does not exist because he is a contradiction in the terms that you have laid out. So either he does not exist at all, or he exists but does not actually fit into the terms that you have given him. So probably is not that good a guy. It's really not that complicated.
Therefore, at least one of the premises about God must be false. Either God is not all good, or he is not all powerful, or he just doesn't exist.
Actually, he could also not be all good and not be all powerful. That's the thing people seem to miss about a universe creator. Sure, the universe is big and impressive, but as far as we are aware, it's not infinitely big / infinitely impressive, so it wouldn't necessarily require an infinitely powerful guy, and it certainly wouldn't need one that's good, bad, or even neutral specifically. And hell, it wouldn't even need to be more powerful than a universe. I mean, take humans for example. A single human is a weak and frail creature, unable to achieve much entirely on its own. But if you get enough of them together, they can completely fuck up an entire planet. It's the one thing that they have actually been doing together with gusto. You gotta give them credit for the teamwork.
What's wrong with this argument?
Let me guess, you don't like it because it's a really fucking good point. Or maybe it's I'm using a bunch of words with wildly inconsistent definitions, which means I get to say whatever I like about God and still be correct, at least in my own head. I mean, it's a fair move. You think I'm using the standard definition when I call myself handsome, famous, and good at the sex? Of course not. Handsome means a person with no face. Famous means I smell weird. And of course, good at the sex is obviously a euphemism for stupid.
First, let's examine what we mean when we say that God would not permit unjust suffering.
Translation. First, let's shift the goalposts so far away from what people are actually saying so that I can argue an entirely different point and still sound like I'm correct to people who are either really dumb or just aren't paying any attention. Probably both.
There are two categories of suffering. Suffering caused by human beings, which we call moral evils, and suffering caused by nature, for instance, earthquakes or cancer.
Even by your own standards, that's just not true. I mean, for starters, animals are not earthquakes, but they can certainly cause and receive suffering without a human being in sight, and cause it to humans as well. And then, of course, there's the stuff that specifically is done by your god. Now, technically, that would be literally everything ever, and there's only really one, but if we want to split things up, there is still things God did on purpose that cause suffering. They are in the Bible and happened all the fucking time. Sometimes caused by weather that he did on purpose, which some might count as one of the first two, but there was literally a bunch of random children who got killed by God with no mechanism involved other than death just kind of happening. So yeah. Oh, and then there's when I kill people, but that's just semantics at this point.
Free will explains how God could be good and allow moral evil.
Nope, it doesn't. In fact, free will is one of those hand-wavy arguments that trick stupid people into thinking that you might have made a good point. But it is a complete nightmare when you think about it for even a moment, because an all-powerful God and free will are two ideas that contradict each other. Either God knows what you're going to do, and thus it must be set in stone because he can't be wrong about the things you are going to do, or you have free will, and he doesn't know, so is not all-powerful. Because funnily enough, knowing things is one of the powers that comes under all of them.
Because God has given people free will, they are free to behave against God's will.
Wait. Are you telling me that the thing that Hitler did that God didn't like was farting out buildings? I mean, that's what your animation shows, and frankly, that's not what bothered people about him. At this point, if that's one of the things that he even could do, it would be considered kind of a neutral move. Although, if I'm remembering my history correctly, he couldn't poop out skyscrapers. The best he could do was a single bedroom bungalow with a front garden. Although don't quote me on that, I might be thinking of Lawrence Llewellyn Bowen.
The fact that they do evil does not prove that God is not good.
I'm sorry. I'm not laughing at 9/11 there, although it's been a minute. I think tragedy plus time equals at least not being bent out of shape about it, but it's the fact that they fucking animated a little cartoon of it. Jesus Christ, whose job was that, and how do I get it? Because I kind of want to make little cartoons out of all of history's atrocities, not gonna lie.
In addition, if there were no God, there would be no absolute standard of good.
Hate to break it to you, pal, but there is no absolute standard of good, least of all in any of the Abrahamic religions. Otherwise, they would all agree on everything, but for some reason, while worshipping the apparently exact same God, they have different no-nos and are all over the place with them. And don't even get me started on the different fragments of each of those with their own standards again of good and evil and all that, because we will be here till the heat death of the frickin' universe.
Every judgment presupposes a standard.
Does it, every judgment? I'm pretty sure I can judge anything with any or even no standard. Like, you really wearing that jacket? Well, I have nothing to say about it. That's my judgment. It is nothing because I simply don't care. Oh, look at you failing to words. It's a skill, and I judge you to be met at it.
And that's true of our moral judgments too. What is our standard for judging evil to be evil?
You already said it. Suffering. Suffering, a really obvious and simple metric. Suffering bad, especially that which affects us directly, aka hurts us, or someone we love, or someone we empathize with. Man, again, you are failing flat with your own standards and words and just debunking the heck out of yourself before you even get to the bad point that you're making. I'm almost impressed, but I'm not gonna be impressed because fuck you, I still got no standards, bitch, and neither has Mrs. Sick. That's why we make such a good couple.
The most we could say about evil, if there were no God, was that we, in our subjective tastes, didn't like it when people did certain things to other people.
Okay, but what's wrong with not liking things being a standard? Oh, I see. You don't like that as a standard, so you get to say that it's not good enough, because when you do or don't like something, it's objective facts about reality. But when I do or don't like something, it's meaningless twaddle that no one should care about, because as usual, it's not hypocrisy when you do it.
We wouldn't have a basis for saying an act was bad, only that we didn't like it.
But we do have a basis for saying it's bad. Human survival. It's a standard that a lot of people think is a thing that must be continued. Mostly because, they are humans and therefore always wrong. And since they have that standard, anything that damages the prospect, like a fucking genocide or even just basic bitch murder, is bad. Not only because it hurts the survival of the species, but because it can happen to others, it can happen to you. Goddamn, this shit is not complicated, but you really don't get it so hard that you literally need other people to tell you what is and isn't good.
So the problem of human evil exists only if God exists.
Wait, what? What exactly is human evil? And does that mean that non-human evil exists without God? Well, that's some good news, because at least I'm safe. But that doesn't mean it makes any sense the other way. People can't cause suffering unless God is real. Well then, maybe God shouldn't exist, since he sounds like a right evil bastard himself, who probably gets off on it.
As for natural suffering, that poses what appears to be a more difficult question.
All of the questions are difficult for you, but I think that's because of a fundamental flaw in your construction. You see, right here, there's supposed to be a brain, but instead, just a piece of paper with IOU 1 Brian written on it. Damn.
We see an innocent child suffer, say from an incurable disease.
You mean one of those diseases that God invented? Yeah, that's fucked up, man. I don't know why he would even do that. And I know some would say, well, maybe it's a test. But I mean, seriously, what an incredibly fucked up thing to do. Be like having several kids and then at random breaking one of their legs because, hey, it'll be good for you somehow. I'm pretty sure it's nothing but suffering for suffering's sake. Again, he does really seem to like doing that.
We complain. Understandable. We don't like it. Understandable. We feel it is wrong, unfair, and shouldn't happen. Understandable.
But what none of those we-dos do is attempt to cure the incurable, because the we-doers are actually just really fucking lazy. But here, in reality, that's actually something we do all the time, because fuck God and his terrible afflictions that he gives people on purpose. We skip that shit and don't let God have his way all the time.
But illogical unless you believe in God.
What an absolutely insane thing to say, as if atheists have no reason to care about their goddamn kids. It's shit like this that proves that guys like this one have literally zero empathy in their entire body. That, or he's so freaking stupid that he can't figure out that people don't need God to care about people and their suffering.
For if you do not believe in God, your subjective feelings are the only basis upon which you can object to natural suffering.
Again, as if feelings aren't there for a reason. Yes, it is just reasons to the extent of we care about things, is feeling things, but that doesn't make them fake, and the reason for the feelings is very much from an objective source. And no, it's not some dude who decided, it's actually something far less arbitrary than that. It's an evolved trait, something that helps people to continue, being. Rather than, again, because some guy says so.
Okay, you don't like it, but how is your not liking something evidence for God not existing?
Wow, that's a complete failure. If your whole point is, if there's no God, there's no good, then just not liking something by your own ridiculous definition absolutely means that God doesn't exist. Otherwise, it would not be good, you frickin' doof.
Think about it.
You first, dumbass.
It's just the opposite. Our judgments of good and evil, natural as well as human, presuppose God as the standard.
They absolutely fucking don't. In fact, the idea of God presupposes that we already came up with these kind of morals and moral thinking, and then someone came along and said, hey, those things that you created, yeah, actually, my God was the one who did them. But the fact is, humans have been doing morality since way before any of the versions of the God you are talking about were even a twinkle in some ancient asshole's eye. And yes, I do mean that one.
If there's no God, there's neither good nor evil. There's just nature, doing what it does.
Okay, but here's the thing. You opened with suffering. So, okay, no good or evil. How does that change the fact that suffering sucks and human beings have empathy? Oh wait, it doesn't change that. And God or no God, some other kind of thing that is godlike and is clearly not God, doesn't change the fact that that happens. Can you see what an utter non-argument this whole thing is? No, probably not. That would require you to actually have spent any time whatsoever considering how you might be wrong, instead of knowing you are always the world's smartest correct boy, just like they do in science. Oh wait, no, they do the opposite.
If nature is all there is absolutely no need to explain why one person suffers and another doesn't.
I mean, there is no need to explain that. That is literally not the conversation we are having. And that is something that needs to be explained when you do a big God guy. Because suddenly, that shit doesn't make any sense. Especially when some ancient ultra-capitalist guy who charges $1 zillion for life-saving medicines because he can, lives that long and prosperous life, and then some innocent child who spent their entire lives trying to help everyone around them gets hit with a disease that evil McMedicine Man could cure but doesn't because fuck you, give me money. No God explains that absolutely fine. Any all good guy makes that situation absolutely insane to justify because God said so.
Unjust suffering is a problem only because we have a sense of what is just and unjust. But where does this sense come from? Certainly not from nature. There's nothing just about nature. Nature is only about survival.
And there it is. Survival is exactly why we have that sense. Talk about missing the forest for the fact that you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Wait, before you go, I have something super important to tell you. It's life or death. It will change everything forever. Nope, wait, it's gone. Oh well, probably wasn't important. But while I have you, don't forget to comment, subscribe and notify. And if you want more of my smexy voice, check out Mrs. Six's channel Spoonstaff Stories, where I narrate and voice all the videos, and she does the work. And if you want to support the channel, check out the merch store for cool t-shirts, or check out Patreon, memberships and PayPal to support directly. Finally, follow me on the medias of social to get completely pointless guff and to keep up on the latest releases. Oh, I just remembered what I was going to tell you. Whatever you do, don't touch the